Years to sequester those people, you see what I'm saying, to the point whereas when you go over there, they got you in a certain part, you see,
Right.
you know, they got you in a certain part, you know, so this is interesting here. I was on the plane coming here. Flew out from Atlanta, had to make a layover in Charlotte. Got on the plane in Charlotte. Now, when I was in Atlanta, I always requested an aisle seat. So when I got there, they didn't have no aisle seat. So I went and got me an aisle seat. She said, "Okay, now I got the aisle seat coming from Atlanta, going to Charlotte. When you get to Charlotte, they got one aisle seat on the plane. One aisle seat on the plane, but it's at the back of the plane." I said, "I don't care where it is, as long as I get an aisle seat." You see, you know, so I'm sitting on the back of the plane, and there's an East Indian couple beside me. They like in their 60s, and they just speaking mostly East Indian. And so this girl came, the stewardess came back, or what you want to call them, not flight attendants, you know, or what have you, came back, the white girl, and she said, "Hey, would you like to sit up there in that seat there? You seat there?" She said, "Because it's only two of you all in that seat. You could have the room between you, you know, and stuff like that." And I said, "Well, yeah, fine." But I said, I thought they didn't have no more aisle seats. So I got up there. It was an Asian girl. And she said, "Well, I was sitting in the seat, but I moved to the window." And I said, "Well, cool." We started sitting there, plane flying. I pulled out a book. She looking at the book, because she wants to have a conversation. And she later told me, "I like to have a conversation when I'm flying." But I'm like, "Wait a minute, hold on now. You're Asian. How many times you get an Asian to actually sit and speak to you?" She said, so we started flying. I said, "Wait a minute, this is a Kuan Yin moment." Because now when I first started dealing with Kuan Yin said, "I want to come to the Africans in America. They need to know me." Yeah. So I started talking about Kuan Yin, and I was in D.C. back in 2006 with Brother TJ, and we went to the Old Country Buffet or some shit. He takes you, you know, I guess get more bang for your buck. So we in the buffet, and an Asian girl comes up to me and goes, "Hi, how you doing?" And I'm looking over there. She's sitting with a white man. And I came up there to teacher. I said, "Teacher, that Asian girl spoke to me, asked me how I was doing and stuff, and she's sitting over there with a white man." I thought, he said, "Yeah, that's odd. An Asian girl gonna speak to you, you might speak to her." I said, "Oh, that's Kuan Yin." Okay, so I said, "Okay, this is another Kuan Yin moment, because this girl, she asked me about the book and she wanted to talk." So she started talking, and she said, "I'm Japanese." She said, "I bet you ain't never spoken to no Japanese like this." I said, "You right. I never could tell who you all were. I damn sure ain't never talked to no Japanese. Maybe a Korean telling me some chicken wings or some Chinese." And we do have a upper scale Chinese restaurant we go to that's got these Chinese. But I said, "I ain't never talked to no Japanese." So she said, "I bet." She said, "I know." She said, "We are the British of Asia." She said, we are the British of Asia. She said, "We're the most arrogant people on the planet." She said, "We don't mess with no other Asians. We shut them out." She said, "And we think we better than all the other Asians." That's right. I said, "Well, it's a pleasure talking to you like this." So she said, so then she started telling me her family life and stuff. I said, "So what you doing in South Carolina?" She said, "Well, I'm over here. I live outside of Charlotte and so on and stuff like this and stuff." I accepted Jesus Christ and stuff like that, so it's going to get interesting. So, I said, well, how did you get to Charlotte? And then she said, okay, let me tell you what went down. She said in the 80s, the Commodores, whatever black groups was coming over, Shalimar, because what's his name live in Japan now, Jeffrey Daniels. They was coming over, but they had a group of brothers that would come over and help them when the concert tours. And they would stay over during the remainder of the year, but they would be roadies or there'd be people that help. She said, I met up with this brother. And she said, we started kicking it, and I got pregnant. And she said, I had to flee Japan because I knew I couldn't have that baby in Japan. It wasn't Japanese. They don't play that shit.
Oh, no.
She said, a family, they took her, they got what they call a deed. Might be like a family register. Rich people have a register, who's on the register of the family, so they can get the inheritance. But they call it the deed. And she said, my grandparents and all the deed that come down to us, they said they cut me out of the deed. Dropped me from the deed. And I had to get the fuck to South Carolina where the brother was from. You see what I'm saying? Because I couldn't have that baby in Japan. It might have been some genocide stuff. And all. And she was your complexion. She said another thing. I'm your complexion and the Japanese calling me ugly. I said, I already know what it is. See, the racism with the Japan is it used to be a black culture. And they fought against, remember they said half the veins, half the blood in the veins of a samurai warrior must run black. That's in the Ivan Van Sertima book and Renoko Shida and all that talk about that stuff. So they got a real racist thing going on because they fight against their past. See, so I came down here and I had 4 children and I accepted Jesus. I said, well, what were you into? Because she said she went all the way to college in Japan, through college. I said, so what was you into before you accepted Jesus over here?
Right.
She said, my family and all my surroundings, they were into some new age stuff. I said, oh shit, you done left the good stuff. And she said that Shindu, she was talking about all this stuff that was into. She said, but her parents disowned her for years, but later on they in their 80s and she done warmed down and they done accept Jesus. And stuff like that. But she was saying, her husband later on in the 90s got on crack, and so she divorced him. And so she come up here to Harlem. She said, well, I said, so where'd you come? She said, I come to New York. I come to New York at least once a month. I love New York. I said, well, she said, I come up to Harlem. Come up to Harlem. I done hooked up with a church up here. I done met another brother and all this type of stuff here. And I come up here, and she said, and I go to the Schomburg. She said, because my children, I've been going to the Schomburg, said, look, y'all better learn something about your history, because she said, I still know my history, but they kicked me out of the country. So she said, no, they're going to learn about their history. It was African-American history, but nevertheless, that's more than most black people know. So she come to the Schomburg to get the history to teach her 4 children. Now, they are all grown now. So she's kicking it with this brother and all, but she started talking about how they were into the New Age and all this type of stuff. Then she said, well, since I'm a Christian, she said, when I would go back to Charlotte, I opened my ministry up. I opened my friendship up to the rednecks. That's what she was saying. She was like it. She said, when I first started going to the rednecks, going to their church, they was preaching, don't vote for Barack Obama because he's the Antichrist. And then she said, so I got a close relationship with these rednecks down there. And she said, so we might be thinking, this post-racial society. She was like, look, I'm in where you all are not. They don't love you. She said, all they do, the stereotypes and stuff they do, you see what I'm saying? She said, that's what they live by. I say they bred on that. And if you don't learn anything about a person's culture, that's the only thing you're going to perceive for the rest of your life. So this whole thing about, I ain't into racism or whatever type thing here. Look, if you got a certain stereotypical notions and preconceived notions about a people being low, If you don't take the time out to learn that history, they're gonna always be that way. And when only when they're around you will they quail their thoughts about you. She said, but they're around me. You see what I'm saying? They're around me, and that's all they do is talk shit about you and their opinions on you. She said, well, she said the black community has embraced me. I said, look,